All right, welcome back here to Keepin the Comic, and today we're going to be going through the full story of one of the tie-in series to Marvel's main Blood Hunt storyline, Wolverine's Blood Hunt. And the tides have turned because this time he's the one that is being hunted, and it's fun to watch what Wolverine does here to navigate this whole thing. Now, this is a previous recording. Hope you enjoy it. Let's dive right on in. And we're going to be picking up here on Wolverine's first issue, where the vampires are on the loose. Vampires are loose. No, seriously, they're everywhere, right? So Wolverine is chilling in this empty bar right now in Barstow, California, waiting on a friend to show up that he's going to be teaming up with here to deal with this vampire infestation. Now, he hears the words, "There you are, Wolverine," but it's not the friend that he was waiting on. You understand me, right? There's 4 soldiers that are here that are pointing guns directly at him. Now, these soldiers have all been turned into vamps. These are also like National Guard, military police. So you can see what type of spread has happened here with these vampires. Now, Wolverine does his signature snicked, right? And the first dude, he just slices off his head. Doesn't waste any single time here, just goes ahead and slices off his head. Now, Wolverine starts to kind of feel bad for him a little bit here because he's just like, you know, these kids didn't really sign up for this. Like, they enlisted to make their parents proud, to earn some moolah, some money for college, but then they ended up like this. But ultimately, man, Wolverine, this is a battle, baby. Like, that was a mistake by him because they just start to unload on him. And they do mention here that the boss said that Wolvie got healing powers, and we're gonna find out who that boss is later on. Wolvie got healing powers, so they shouldn't waste any time trying to turn him. Now, Wolverine, he gets shot in the gut and then just kind of just goes berserk after that, right? Wolverine, he silks his claws right under one of their chins. He stabs another with like a sharpened pool stick. He slices another one's head off. Like, we just get right into the action in this first comic here. But then Wolvie, he gets tackled and gets out and throws outside. Actually, he slices another one's head off, and then he gets tackled outside. Then there's a soldier that just starts yelling, "Yo, fry him!" Right? So we see Wolverine getting hit in the back by like this beam that's just hit him in the back here. And Wolverine mentions that it feels like fire burning him alive. And we also get to see like this little twirling in the sky too, which we're gonna be explaining a little bit later on as we go through the comic. We're gonna actually jump a little bit into like Blood Hunt really quickly, like just explain some quick things from there, and then we'll jump back into this a little bit later on. But like I said, so Wolvie, he's getting fried by an active denial system electromagnetic beam. I didn't have to say that. I just wanted to say it because I feel like it was going to be a tongue twister, so I decided to say it anyways. Either way, what it's doing is that it's heating up the adamantium inside of his body, which is causing him to feel even more pain because the adamantium is getting heated up. And then on top of that, he's getting, like, the thing is piercing his skin anyways. So it feels pretty much basically like 100 times worse. By the way, we gotta look at these teeth, man. Like, you see like the spit in their mouth and then like the fangs. It looks kind of gross, the red eyes. You know, I've seen vampires before in comics, but I'm just saying it just looks a little bit different for me. Then, like, out of nowhere, right? Like, this blast, this like blue blast comes out of nowhere, which is like followed then by like 2 sharp arrows that go right to the chest and then right to the eyes of like 2 of the different soldiers that are there. Then, so I'm not gonna lie to you, this hot chick, she just comes out of nowhere with like a crossbow and the gun, and there's like a beam that's like the smoke of the beam that's falling off, and she says something like, "I'm just in time, mon ami." Listen, she looks pretty damn good in that suit, if you ask me. Now, her name is Louise, and she goes by the name, or Louise, I think that's how it is, right? That's how I probably should pronounce it here. And she goes by the alias here of Night Guard. Now, Louise had saved Logan before when Dracula had stolen some of Wolverine's blood. And then when they met up another time in the comics here, Louise's entire crew have been slaughtered by vampires that they were hunting. Because you can obviously see, like, yo, Louise, she is a vampire hunter. Like, that is what she do. That's her day job. You know, that's her 9 to 5, right? And some of her crew, like that crew that she was rolling with, some of them turned into vampires because those vampires that they were hunting, you know, ended up getting them turned. And so Louise, I'm gonna screw that name up continuously, forgive me here. she is now a vampire herself, right? Now, to prevent Louise from becoming one of like the evil vampires, Wolverine had taken her to a place called like Savalith, I think is how it's pronounced now, which is a place where it's a realm in the other world that houses vampires who learn how to control their bloodlust. Now, Logan explains to her basically what's been going on. So we flash back to like this scene here where Logan was in a casino and like he was just there chilling, playing his slots, drinking his beer, and then all of a sudden, like all the security people that were there just turned into vampires and just started to like go after all the people that were there, right? Just like biting them on the neck, sucking their blood, eating dinner, whatever you want to call it. And one of them actually knew who Logan was. He was like, looks like your looks run out, Logan, right? So it's like, that's kind of weird. Like, why do you know my name? So another little hint as to what's going on here, specifically with Wolverine. As you can kind of see here, Wolverine is being targeted. He's being hunted here. Now, of course, Wolverine kind of just made quick work of him, right? Ran through him, cut off their head. He actually said something like, hey, the best way to put them down was by making sure that Wolverine himself didn't lose his head, and made sure that the vampires that they lost theirs. Then he finally goes outside and he saw like this little twirling patch, right? Remember I talked about a little twirling patch in the sky a little bit earlier, which was shocking to him because it was literally like midday at lunchtime. So he's like, yo, why is it so dark outside right now? So where this is all stemming from, if we go back to like Blood Hunt issue number 1, this is stemming from like Dark Force energy here. So there's a group that is called the Structure. That's what they call themselves. This is a vampire cult, and what they were doing is that they were detonating Dark Force users and turning them into portals to then block out the sun, which basically allowed for this vampire uprising and pretty much basically darken the entire world, not just like one particular area, the entire world. And they were like mobilizing legions across the globe. They were hitting population centers. They were hitting critical infrastructures. And they also took out the Avengers. Like this kill squad of like ultra vampires, they feed on superhuman blood, and they also like get empowered by feeding on things like pain or ghosts or magic. And the Structure originally, like they had lost their leader, right? And the leader that because of Moon Knight, they had lost their original leader because of Moon Knight. So then in like an interesting turn of events, we find out in Blood Hunt issue number 1, like the main comic for this crossover here, that Blade actually is the new leader, and we see him basically just like completely kill Doctor Strange, which was a shocking event here. I'm sorry if that was a spoiler. I'm assuming that if you're reading Blood Hunt right now, Wolverine, that you probably already read the previous ones. I apologize if that is not the case, but I'm not going to spoil Blood Hunt 2. Go read that separate issue there. So let's jump back here into Wolverine and let's talk about Wolverine's Blood Hunt. So they're trying to find out why both the soldiers and the casino guards are seeking after Wolverine specifically. So another friend of Logan named Jeff Bannister, who is a CIA agent, tells Wolverine and Night Guard where the National Guard unit is from and what location to go kind of intercept them at. So while they are on their way there, they are stopped and confronted by another set of soldiers that are after Wolverine again. So both Louise and Logan, they do their best to fight off the soldiers, and they pretty much basically take quite a few of them down. Like they do a pretty damn good job. You see Louise, she has a little helmet on here. One of them sees that she's a vampire. They're like, oh, you're didn't get to say about, she's like, yes, I'm a vampire, right? And what they realize is that, these dudes are not just regular soldiers that are after him in the middle of the roadway here. These are mercenaries, like professional killers is who these guys are. So they're like, what is going on? So Wolverine gets a call here and he thinks that it's a call that he's getting from Bannister again. But instead, this time it's actually from Maverick, aka David North, aka Christopher Nord, aka Agent Zero, who is an elite mercenary. Like this guy is the real deal. Now, he used to be a mutant here, but he lost his powers because of the decimation, like Scarlet Witch, when she decided to eradicate the mutant gene from like 90% of the remaining mutants that were there after the Genosha genocide, right? So he doesn't have his mutant powers anymore, but he's still a damn good elite mercenary, right? And he basically tells Wolverine, like, listen, eventually this all ends in vampires kind of fighting for the crown here. And I'm trying to secure my place now by recruiting you, Wolverine, to come over onto my side. And if you don't want to come over onto my side, I'm just going to continue to keep on sending people after you time and time again. And I am going to continue to up the ante on it. So what are you going to do? And Maverick's just like, listen, if you can't beat him, join him. And I'm asking you to join me. Now, Wolverine alongside Louise here, aka Night Guard, whom he had reached out to in the very last issue after Blade had gotten control over the Dark Force and then used them to like turn the lights out on the entire world. So the rest of the Merc soldiers that were after Wolverine and Louise at the very end of the issue, they are going to town on them. Now, this area where they're at, right, is like the north of Long Beach, California, as is mentioned here. And Wolverine takes one of the guns, right? Like after he's like dusting these fools, like slashing their heads off, you know, Louise is doing her thing, like kicking ass as well. Like he takes this gun and takes down this drone that Maverick was using to watch this entire fight. Now, shortly after this, Wolverine calls in a favor from Bannister. Now, Bannister, if we remember, is a CIA agent who was giving him intel in the very last issue. So he calls in a favor, like Bennett. So Wolverine calls in a favor to Bannister, and then Banner calls in a favor to like one of his Air Force buddies that then sends out this drone in and blows the Merc soldiers up, like just blows them up completely, just so that Louise and Wolverine would be able to escape. But before they escape, Bannister lets them know, or like finally like reveals to them, who's been behind the whole Dark Force chaos in the first place. It has caused this entire world to go pitch black, and it is Blade. Now, if you've been reading the main Blood Hunt issue, you already knew that Blade was behind this, right? But our guy Wolverine had no freaking clue what was going on. So he's finding this out just now. And this shook homeboy up a little bit, but it really actually shakes up Louise a little bit too, because she actually mentions this a little bit later on. Like she was like, I used to look up to Blade, right? Like Blade was like the standard. As a daywalker vampire, he was the standard. Fierce vampire hunter who used to go and you know, wreak justice, right? And then when Louise had turned into a vampire herself, she was like, he was even more of an inspiration to me, right? Because he would thinking about how hard it is to stave off your thirst for human blood, like all of this, right? So she really, really looked up to him. So the fact that he's now behind this whole Dark Force chaos thing and this vampire uprising, it's very hard for her to kind of stomach that. Now, after they had escaped though, right? We see Maverick, who had a backup drone and was actually able to see Wolverine not die. Now he's here talking to this lady that's in a red dress with like red fingernails, which I'm not gonna lie to you, look kind of sexy. Maybe there's something wrong with me. Let's move on. Now this is Alyssa. She's a vampire and a former leader of the Siren Sect Vampire Clan. Damn it, that was a mouthful. Which is an all-female line of seductress vampires, right? Now she's telling Maverick, listen, my guy, you better make sure that you get Wolverine. I don't care about your promises, right? I work with deeds getting done. And all you've been giving me right now is promises. Because when Blade is done fighting, this is what she's telling him, like when Blade is done fighting all the heroes, this dude's gonna be tired and he's gonna be weakened from all of it. That is when we strike. And either way, she's gonna be queen of the vampires. And it's your choice, Maverick, whether or not you are going to be a king with me, right? So she puts it all in this court, like, you better get the job done. You better, you know, get Wolverine here on our side. Now, one thing that I found to be interesting is that later on, when Wolverine and Louise were talking about Blade being the one behind the Dark Force and Maverick trying to get Wolverine on his side, he stated that something's like off with this whole Blade leading this charge. Like it seems very out of character for him. And I agree. Like I've been saying that since reading the first issue of Blood Hunt here, the main line. I'm like, this seems really weird. Like this is not really who Blade is, right? And he even mentions that, like as it pertains to Maverick, Maverick is not really like a power trip guy. Like Maverick is more of like, hey, let me get some money type of guy, right? Let me use this to my advantage to get some money. You know, so it's kind of weird that he would just be following Alyssa and being on this power trip. Like it's kind of sus is basically what he's saying. And I think he's definitely onto something, at least where Maverick is concerned, because one of Alyssa's abilities is that she has clairvoyance, which can hypnotize and mind control others. So I'm wondering if she could potentially be controlling Maverick? And I'm wondering, to a certain extent, is there someone that's also probably controlling Blade as well? Like, I guarantee you that's probably where this is all gonna lead, right? Now, as it pertains to Wolverine and Louise, Bannister had given them intel that the National Guard vampire soldiers, another mouthful, that they were gonna be over at the port of Long Beach. So we see some of these merc soldiers again at the port, right? Loading up these ships with civilians. And if we remember from the last issue, that Wolverine has stated or started off at the bar, right? And the bar was in Barstow, which was a very vacant bar. There was nobody around. There was nobody in the town entirely. The whole town was vacant. So these civilians, I'm assuming, is from, you know, Barstow. So ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce you to my guy right here, Big Dan, as he calls himself. So this man right here, he spits on one of the vampires, right? And while the soldier is trying to go after Big Dan to attack him back, Louise fires an arrow right into this dude's mouth, taking his punk ass out. So then Wolverine tells Big Dan, listen, my guy, we in this now. You get the civilians out of this place. So Louise and then Wolverine start making quick work of these fools. And I gotta say, man, watching Wolverine stab people in the head with his claws and seeing the blood on his claws as well, it is quite the sight to behold. And Louise is doing her thing too, like that UV cannon gun with the blue U on it, that UV cannon machete, or as we would say in Jamaica, the machete. It's kind of sexy, guys. I love seeing some of these fight scenes here. So then Wolverine and Louise, they look to take this boat after this fight's done, right? They look to take this boat to see if they can go and find Maverick's base in Santa Cruz, because one of the soldiers had mentioned something about Santa Cruz. So they blow up a ship before they go. And when they are on their way to Santa Cruz, actually, when they got to Santa Cruz Island, they see a cave, which looks like a perfect hideout for vampires, right? As Louise had mentioned. But as they approach it, there's like this current, this wave current that is coming right towards them, which to their surprise are these Aqueous vampires. I have no idea how to pronounce that correctly. Aqueous vampires. Listen, they're basically sea monster vampires, okay? That's what they are. They're sea monster vampires, and that's where this issue ends. Now, Wolverine and 90, they're on this small ass boat, right? That is surrounded by these sea vampires. But one by one or two by two, Wolverine is slicing and dicing, and Night Guard is stabbing and blasting. And there's actually this like really cool ass shot, by the way, where one of the like the sea vampires is cut into 3 different pieces. Like you can see his head, you see his midsection and his legs, and they're just like sinking down in the water. And I gotta tell you, man, I was just laughing my behind off just looking at the scene here. So Wolverine at one point, like he finds himself in a rather compromising position, right? Like after one of the vamps cut the crap out of his shoulder, you can see like the blood and it's kind of bubbling up here. And then he gets on top of Wolverine, telling him, I will suck every last drop of blood from your mutant body, which I'm not gonna lie to you here, sounds a little dirty for different reasons, but I'm just gonna leave it alone, right? I'm gonna leave it right there. So Wolverine, he takes this gun, which is very unconventional for Wolverine to take a gun, and then he fires it at him, right? And then the vampire catches on fire and he starts to go overboard, but right before he goes overboard, he like nicks the boat's engine, and then that gets caught on fire and the blow eventually just like explodes. But before that happens, Wolverine is like to Night Guard, put your helmet on because we're about to be like Michael Phelps, so we're about to go swimming. Now, this is a perfect spot if you ask me for the sea vampires, because I mean, listen, it's the water, my guy. This is where they do their best dirty work. And Night Guard and Wolverine, now they're doing their best that they possibly could, right? There's blood everywhere. Now, let's be fair. They kind of whooping their ass. But I'm gonna be honest, at one point I looked at Night Guard's gun and I see like this bright blue light on it. And I'm like, do you really want to be shooting that? You're just gonna attract more creatures that are underwater, like more dangerous creatures that are underwater. And then Wolverine makes this point. He's like, hey, if there's this blood in the water now, there's usually some other creatures that are here. There's some bigger fish that are around. And then out of nowhere, these sharks come in and they start to eat these sea vampires, which then gives Wolverine and Nighty an opportunity to swim up out of there. So they finally get to this hideout cave where Maverick is, right? And now as they're walking through, Maverick and Alyssa see them on the camera. And Maverick starts talking to him. You know, that typical Maverick and Wolverine banter. Oh, you just got past my maritime blockade. And Wolverine's like, I don't know, Mav. Why don't you ask that chump slick flowing outside? And I'm like, bro, who says chump slick? Like, what is that? Who says chump, period? Anyways, let's move on. So Maverick is telling them, I told my people that you were the real deal. And in order to prove that, I had to send all these folks after you to show that you were worth it. Cause girl, you're worth it. Sorry, y'all. Those are my intrusive thoughts. Either way. So listen, remember the whole point of this thing, right, is that Maverick wants to get Wolverine on their side so that once this whole main Blood Hunt issue is done, that they can ascend to being the strongest vampires. Alyssa wants to be the queen of vampires. Maverick is supposed to be the king, but that's not necessarily kind of how things are going to end up working out here. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. So the conversation ends. Wolverine takes out the camera, right? And then as he's talking to Nighty, he recalls a convo that he just had with Maverick. Maverick had said to Wolverine, "You're all alone." And then it dawned on him, yo, Maverick can't see Nightguard, aka Louise, because she's a vampire. And on camera, vampires don't show up. So he had no idea that he's been kind of like rolling along with somebody, because Maverick had mentioned, hey, your guy Bannister is not able to help you out anymore. All your communication is shut down, because Bannister had helped him out with like the drone and, you know, blowing up the other vampires in the other scene here. He'd also given them the intel to let them go to the boats and eventually get to Santa Cruz. So Bannister's been helping him out. So that's all that, you know, Maverick is thinking that has been helping him. He has no idea that Louise is around here that's been kind of traveling with him this entire time. So then these like mummy vampires with swords, they jump out after them, right? And I'm not sure if they're actually mummy vampires, but they look like mummies and they're vampires. So let's just call them mummy vampires, right? So they then, like, Louise blows open a door, gets them into like close quarters. Wolverine and Nightguard kind of really start kind of mowing them down at that point, and they get what looks like all of them down. And then the match is over, and then all of a sudden, like, Wolverine then stabs himself with one of the swords right into the stomach. And I'm like, why is this dude doing this? This is also so dramatic. Like, why is he doing this? So then Nightguard asks the same question we're asking, right? Like, why would you do that? So then he explains it's to keep his healing factor busy, which leaves him vulnerable so that he can, to the vampire enzyme, right? So then he asks Louise, yo, can you turn me? So then Louise obliges with what they say is this long kiss. So then Maverick sees that he had stabbed himself in the stomach and then saw him disappear off the camera. So now they're like, Alyssa and Maverick is like, yo, did he just turn himself into a vampire? This kind of works in our favor, does it not? Like, he kind of did our dirty work for us. And then Maverick is just like, you know what? I'm going to go handle this face to face. This is how it's going to always end up anyways, that we're going to go face to face. So that he goes, well, before he goes, he actually tells like Alyssa's like, nothing has changed, right? Because even though he turned into a vampire now, nothing has changed. And then Alyssa states, wrong, everything has changed, and we'll find out why in a second. So then Wolverine himself, he's feeling pretty damn good about himself right now. He's like, yo, I feel stronger. He's like, look at me, I got night vision, baby. I got night vision, right? And then he takes out like one more mummy vampire, which I'm just like, where was this mummy vampire hiding at? And then Wolverine gets shot with a 44 Magnum by who else? Maverick, who then shoots him a couple more times. And then Alyssa, she just like shortly follows after and says, like, it holds like Wolverine's face and kind of like caresses his beard. I'm just like, girl, get your damn hands off my Wolverine, right? But then she like caresses his face, and it's just like, I'm just a future queen seeking out her future king. So I'm like, hold on, did Maverick just get dumped? To the left, to the left. No, seriously, that's just basically what just happened. And Wolverine's a vampire now. So honestly, I'm just like, okay, well, the next issue is probably just going to be a showdown between Wolverine and Maverick, and then Alyssa in a certain extent, because now Maverick is upset because she's like, I was supposed to be the king of the vampires. Now she just made Wolverine the king of the vampires. What is going on here? Now we pick up back here in Santa Cruz Island in California, where Wolverine had just come face to face with his old pal Maverick and Alyssa, the head of the Siren sect of vampires. Now, due to Wolverine, who had just voluntarily been turned into a vampire by his friend Louise, Alyssa, being the seductress vampire that she is, she can now control Wolverine's desires. And of course, the first act that she wants, that Wolverine's new queen wants, is a test of combat, aka Wolverine killing Maverick. Because as she puts it to Wolverine, Maverick stands in the way of their glorious future together, which is messed up, man, because she was saying the same thing to Maverick a little bit earlier on. Now, Wolverine gets those claws going and starts charging after Maverick. But in the meantime, Louise with her fine self in that damn suit, sorry y'all, my bad, she was on a whole nother mission, right? Which was to get into the control hatch of this place. But to get there first, she had to take out some of these vampire soldiers that were there guarding the door. Now, once she does that, she blasts through this part of the cave that leads her right to the heart of the compound. Now, this is all a part of Wolverine's plan in the first place, just so that you know. Now, right as she's about to shoot her gun again like a stake directly into the heart of the compound to shut everything down, she gets shot a couple times by some of the soldiers that were coming in after, you know, she had entered in. But due to like Logan's blood that is now inside of her body, she has this like accelerated healing factor, which makes her able to heal from those gunshot wounds pretty fast. Now, in the meantime, we jump back here to Maverick and Wolverine. They're still throwing blows at each other while Alyssa's just there like, yeah, let's do it. Come on, guys. I'm kidding. That's definitely not what she is saying. She's basically egging on Wolverine to kick his ass. Now, Maverick starts to realize that Alyssa is no longer in his head, or as Alyssa calls it, she no longer is whispering sweet nothings that he wants to hear anymore. Ironically though, Wolverine is like, yeah, she's only talking to me now, bub. And I'm like, Wolverine, you going along with this? You okay with this right here being controlled by Alyssa? I'm still not feeling it, y'all. I'm still not okay with Wolverine being a vampire, okay? Now, Maverick is trying to explain to Wolverine that this is all wrong. But Wolverine is just out for blood and even says, it feels right to me, even mocking Maverick, saying things like, all this pathetic whining as he like punches him directly in the face. At one point, he asks him, what's eating you, buddy? In other words, he's basically asking the question like, what's really bothering you? To which Wolverine mocks him again and says, what, you found someone that you thought could really love you, huh? Because the truth is, Maverick seems to have really loved Alyssa, although I kind of feel like it was just because of her seductressness. That's the reason why. But listen, what the heck do I know? Now, Maverick is trying to help Wolverine understand that, listen, just how I have been fooled, she's also fooling you as well. And at one point, Wolverine does in his mind acknowledge that like what he's doing doesn't really feel right. But before he could really like lean into those thoughts, Alyssa takes control back. And once again, Wolverine is positioning himself to be able to take out Maverick. But right before he could finish the job, right, the command center breach alarm starts going off, and Alyssa then beckons to Wolverine to go check it out, which then gives Maverick an opportunity to escape. Also, guys, if you've been enjoying these videos so far, please consider subscribing to the channel here, hit that notification bell, and also join the Discord so that you can get more updates here from the channel. Also, if you're liking these videos so far, be sure to let YouTube know by hitting that like button for the good old algorithm. So back at the command center, right, we see one of the vampire soldiers that Louise hadn't fully taken out yet. So he was the one that pressed the button and then started getting this alarm going off. So then Louise makes sure to remove his head from his body once and for all. But then Wolverine comes in charging after her, to which Alyssa acknowledges that Wolverine seems to have affections for Louise, and he sees her, or she sees her, as competition. Now, Alyssa also mentions how she was impressed by Louise's reflexes and being able to get out of the way of Wolverine's charges, which once again is most likely due to Wolverine's blood being inside of her. She probably also developed some more quickness and agility and speed as well. Now, Louise knows that Wolverine's mind is not his own right now because she knows of Alyssa and knows that she's the leader of the Siren sect. So she knows like the powers that she has. So just like in the last issue here, Louise, once again, like she stabs Logan in the stomach. And I was like, man, this dude has just been getting beat up for the last 2 issues. And I kind of feel bad for him. But the reason why she stabs him is just so that his healing factor could activate and that to be able to get the vampire enzyme out of him and then to be able to break that spell that Alyssa has on him, which like I said, it's just hard watching Wolverine going through all this in the past 2 issues. It's been a lot. So this pisses off Alyssa, right? Who then turns into this, well, she goes full on ugly ass vampire mode on Louise. there is actually this really dope visual of both Alyssa and Louise, who are kind of like floating in the air and fighting at the same time, while like Wolverine is trying to like heal and pull out Louise's sword out of him at the same time too. Kind of a dope ass visual here. Now, although the sword is finally out of Wolverine, his healing factor still needs to fully kick in order for him to be able to kind of get going. It's been a long 24 hours for this guy, okay? And in the meantime, Alyssa has Louise pinned down, and it looks like she might win this one. And boy, I just cannot overlook how ugly Alyssa looks right now. This is one scary ass looking scene. But Louise, she got this though, right? She pulls out one of those trusty stakes and then she stabs Alyssa in the heart with it, which immediately turns her into dust. And then right at the end of it all, Maverick shows up again saying, "Till death do us part," which I thought was kind of funny. Now, Wolverine is still all pissed about him working with Alyssa in the first place, to which he lets Wolvie know, "I did it for love, Logan." He explained that she came to him to offer him a job initially, and then she turned him instead. And then he's kind of just been, you know, kind of falling for it ever since. Now, the good news is because Alyssa is dead, Maverick is also now free from the blood curse as well. Now, in the aftermath of this here, Wolverine's old CIA pal Bannister lets him know that they are in the clear, and at least on this island, they are good. And that his super duper pals, though, that they still need some help, because remember, there is a main Blood Hunt storyline, and we saw the Avengers lining up in issue number 4 of Blood Hunt. So it looks like the tides are turning, you know, for the overall heroes here. Now, Wolverine reminisces on how Alyssa's control was so strong, and that he basically understands how Maverick felt and why he was still so drawn to Alyssa. Louise lets Logan know that she needs to head back to Savalith because she's been in this world too long and her vampiric urges are becoming harder to resist. But before they part ways, there is, or did I just say part ways? Part ways, there is one last thing for them to do, which is to have one last kiss. And I'm like, Logan, get your hands off my, it's fine, Logan, you get to have this win. So this is the conclusion here of Wolverine Blood Hunt, the tie-in story. If you've been following this whole series, what were your thoughts on this entire thing here? Personally, I'm still not a huge fan of the whole Wolverine turning into a vampire thing, but overall, I have actually enjoyed the story. I'm a big Wolverine fan, so you know, I'm gonna try anyways, right? I'm always gonna enjoy some of these stories. So like and subscribe here for more on the channel. Join the Discord. The rest of the videos from this series are gonna be in the description of this video and also in the playlist. And as always, guys, thanks so much for kicking it with Keepin' the Comic.